Radio welcomes you to Myths and Legends with Janette Jade, psychic medium and her guests, sharing ghostly experiences, tales of the unexpected and paranormal. Join us now if you dare.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. You are tuned into SOC Radio. I am Janette Jade, psychic medium. You can find me on Facebook at Janette Jade's Loving Eden or Janette Jade, psychic medium. And welcome to our show, Myths and Legends. Would love to share your experiences today. So if you'd like to jump on to Skype and join us on Circle of Mediums for a free Skype call, love to hear any of your own stories or personal experiences. Register online and join in our chat rooms, www.spiritualistonline.com. Today we'll be reading some stories like we normally do on the show. We actually have 2 pages that we follow on Facebook now, and we read out some of their stories. Our usual one that we use is GPSML, which is Ghosts, the Paranormal, Supernatural, Myths and Legends. You can follow them on Facebook. You can even put in your own experiences onto their Facebook pages. Answer any of the questions that some people have, even because some people have got their own experiences and are always looking for other people's thoughts. Plus, there's some awesome stories on there. The other pages that we follow now is, now this one's all in capital letters, Tell Me a Ghost Story. Now, if you like EVPs, video footage, and all those sorts of things, as well as stories, historical stories, Tell Me a Ghost Story have plenty of video footage that you can play, linking to some YouTubes and things. So we'll be reading a few stories from them today as well. Today, I have a guest in, second time lucky. We have James Thomas Devitt, who is joining us today. So I'll welcome in James. Welcome to the show this morning. We made it.
Thank you, Janette. Yeah, we finally made it.
We made it.
It's going to be fun. I've been looking forward to this, I can tell you. I've had some extremely interesting experiences in my life as well, so yeah.
Yes, I've had a bit of an experience with James the last time we were supposed to be on the show, and the service didn't want to play. But James and I were able to get to know each other via Skype and learn a bit more about what each other does. So most people know what I do. I do Reiki and a bit of psychic mediumship work. And James, let us know what you do and where we can find you as well, where people can follow you.
Well, I'm online. I'm on the World Wide Web at www.bluestarspiritual.com. I'm on Facebook at The Way Spiritual Philosophy is my group, and then my page is Blue Star Spiritual Group International. What I do, I've been doing this kind of stuff for about 30 years. Started in Oklahoma. My grandmother put me on this path on the 12th of November 1986.
Wow.
In fact, a story I'm going to share with you today is actually has to do with her and around that time. I have been a Reiki master since March of 1991. I have taught Reiki in the Western U.S. and Hawaii and Australia. In 2015, I created a new kind of reading because I've done readings as far back as 1989 and 1990, but had gone more along the lines of spiritual development and teaching people how to get their own answers for themselves. But in 2015, I developed a new reading called the Personal Akashic Scroll. And basically, it's about a 5 to 6 page reading in Word. And I tell people about their personal life, their life path in numerology. I then tell them about 3 of their guides with personal messages from each one of those guides. I then tell them about 3 of their past lives, and then a message at the end, which is it's a message from Spirit that you need for your path at this time. I've also developed the Blue Star Healing Method, which is a quantum healing modality. Through that, I'm able to remove past life blockages, past life stuff that we've been carrying around for God knows how many lifetimes. I've removed dark implants and um, creatures and beings that have attached themselves to a person's etheric body. I can replace damaged chakras. I can actually remove all karma. And I started teaching it last year and actually have a workshop coming up in September in Wellington. Looks like I might have one coming up in Christchurch in August. And I'm actually working with somebody at the moment to do one, believe it or not, over in New South Wales, over in the Hunter Valley,
And when are you
possibly in
doing that one?
November. Possibly in November.
And what do you do in those workshops? Exactly.
I
Well,
I teach people how to do the Blue Star Healing Method. So I teach them
right.
how to replace chakras. I teach them how to remove stuff. I teach them um, how to do this healing modality. And I have seen people who, I literally have seen people who have taken the workshop and it has transformed their life. There's a young lady who took the very first workshop in April of last year in Wellington. She drove all the way down from Hastings. And just so that you know, that's about a 4.5 hour drive.
Mm,
And she drove that in the morning before the workshop and got there
wow.
for 8:30 start in the workshop. So she drove. Yeah, exactly. That's how
That's
much she
keen.
really wanted to do it. And I have watched her transform immensely. And she actually assisted us at our workshop in Hastings at the end of last February, just a couple of months ago. And she was removing stuff. She removed an entity out of somebody. She was replacing chakras, and seeing people do this is just amazing. But this is a completely new modality, a healing modality, and it's completely quantum in its scope. So, a person who does the workshop, it's a 2-day workshop,
Hmm.
and when you finish, you are a master healer of the Blue Star Healing Method. Um, for the workshops here in New Zealand, they're only $300 for the whole thing. I also
Wow,
include
it's cheap.
a talk. Yeah, I also include a talk and a channeling session on the Saturday evening because I've been channeling for 27 years. And and then over in Australia, it's going to be probably around $550 for the whole weekend,
Hmm.
but only because my expenses are a great deal more.
More
The
if you got to fly
flights,
here. Yeah.
yeah. And my wife helps me with teaching the workshop and everything. And she's, of course, a master healer, and she's one of the most incredible spiritual um, individuals that I've ever come across in my life. So, yeah.
Oh, that's lovely on all sorts of levels. That one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's really lovely. So when are these courses? There's one in the one
There's
hopefully in
one
November
there's one in
here.
September in Wellington, which is
Hmm.
September 9th and 10th. I at the spiritual fair that I did on Saturday up in Christchurch, I got to meet Kim, who actually does stuff here with Sock Radio.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, I got to meet Kim and Diane and Annie, and Annie is the lady who puts on the spiritual fairs in Christchurch, and so it was really wonderful to meet some of these people and doing the healings. And so I was asked at the end of the day on Saturday if I would be willing to do a workshop there. So I'm actually going to be discussing that this week and hopefully putting together a workshop for August in there. And
Oh,
then
okay.
a friend of mine, Jill is runs a Facebook group actually on like mediumship and ghosts and stuff like this. Um, she came over from Australia and did my workshop in March up in the Sharda Center in Tuakau, just south of Auckland. And she wants me to come over to the Hunter Valley in New South Wales. And I'm going to be speaking with her hopefully this week and hopefully be putting something together for November. I don't
That
have
sounds like a
dates for
yeah.
Christchurch or the Hunter Valley yet, but hopefully November, hopefully the first or second weekend in November.
Wow, there's some dates that I might have to look into because it sounds very intriguing, especially after my Skype conversation with you. So
Well,
yeah, I'm popping
it's
those
something
down.
that's I've had people who have done Reiki for many, many years tell me that they haven't experienced anything like the Blue Star Healing Method.
Mm,
And I've had people at spiritual fairs come and get a treatment, and before I know it, they've brought three other people going, "No, you have to have a treatment with him." They
yes,
just it changes people on a cellular level, and it's all about assisting a person to let go of all the crap, get rid of the stuff that's holding them back, get rid of the stuff that's creating fear and doubt in them, and helping to reconnect them with their true self and their true path.
totally
So
agree. Totally agree. I've just been having
yeah,
that conversation this weekend actually about pretty much
there you
that
go.
about, and also with with the whole entity thing and the whole all your past life things and everything that comes in, and that's what I experienced, which in my own Reiki. And the I've had different beings come through and different things being attached and different some people are more like I have to go past lifey things. So this sort of thing intrigues me even more to sort of perhaps that's the direction that I need to be looking in a bit more of, because I suppose to have a bit more of an understanding, I suppose, um, with the few
Well,
things that have been happening,
well, I mean,
especially.
I've having been on this path for 30 years and having encountered some of the beings that I've encountered and having interacted with some of the people that I've interacted with, it just you literally get to a point where you realize quite quickly that what you think you
Mm,
don't really know, and there's so much more going on than meets the eye, and
I,
a lot of people just
totally.
don't realize that.
Mm. It's I have clients coming to see me tomorrow, and it's quite interesting. I won't go into the details of what the person is and everything, but I have um, they sent me some video footage, which was just personal stuff, and then I don't think they've realized, but they've sent me a photo as well. And in that photo, I can see two different types of energies, which are not, your past loved ones' energies, put it that way. And so I'd say that in the house, there's a lot of torment between two different types of energies. One of them being, give me your goosebumps here. One of them's a very purple, and uh, the two different types of purples, indigo and purple side, which is
Yeah,
trying to surround the other, but the other one is what do you call the entities side of things as well. And I actually had who I think is they are associated with, because I've, like with everything that I do, prior to seeing people, I start experiencing things. And I actually had an entity turn up in my room when I was trying to go to bed the other night. And that's quite good when I'm a bit more aware of these things that are happening. And how do you put it? It's hard to describe what it looked like, but first of all, I saw green eyes, and then I'm like, and then it hissed, and then I'm like, okay, what's going on here? But then I got to see it, and the leg. How do you know how bats walk with their wings?
yes.
The legs were a little bit like that, so it wasn't like a two, like a human sort of figurine, and I had to question why it was there, but I wasn't scared of it, but I actually managed to make
Yeah.
it go away, shrink it and make it go away. But I straight away knew that it was like an attachment or something to the people that I'm seeing tomorrow, if that makes
Right.
sense.
No, it does make sense. And the thing is, and what a lot of people don't understand, there's a lot of people out there who just for whatever reason, they try and ignore these
Mm,
things, and they try and dismiss it and say, "Oh, well, it's not really real, and it's not, it's oh, it's all fantasy." And but at the end of the day, I have literally I had a participant in one of the workshops that I did last October in Wellington, and on this Saturday, she started convulsing,
mm,
and there was a reptilian who had been connected to her for literally thousands upon thousands of years. And I removed this being. And because I am able to do that. I I have done this kind of work since 1995. I speak in universal light language. So because I speak in universal light language, I literally am able to counteract anything that they may try to do or say or anything else. And so all was fine, and she was fine, and then all of a sudden Sunday comes, she's on the table, we're doing treatments, and what happens but she goes into convulsions again. And she literally has an even bigger and an even badder, shall we say, reptilian attached to her. And when you're getting rid of these things, right,
mm.
it's it can be very, you have to know what you're doing. You have to know what's going on with it, because if you don't, it can cause all sorts of problems.
Because you're shifting a huge energy out as well, and
Oh
that would
yeah.
change the whole what the physical body and the energetic body are so used to having this thing attached, and now you're
Yeah,
taking it out, and it's like a shock to the system in some ways.
it is. And in fact, I mean, it's like um we finally got her to a point where we could get her on the table, and the entity had been, for lack of a better term, disabled, and we were able to focus it. And so all of the participants actually participated in removing this being from her. And there was literally 10 of us working on her. And it was just mind blowing. And it just, it's like it takes you, you realize really quickly that what you think you know
Mm,
is only part of it. And the fact is that on this planet, it is the complexity, it is so complex, and people just they like it simple. So yeah.
absolutely. And I think that's a huge thing. And like I like to share what, when we tried to run this show a couple of weeks back, and James and I connected, like I said, via Facebook, and you kept on asking me the same questions all the time. But then we got into it was such an awesome experience. And it's funny because you do go on your mind, a bit like everything else, and whether it be mediumship or psychic, whatever, it's even
Mm,
this, it's like
yeah.
you go on your head, oh my goodness, am I making this up or what? But what James actually did to me, he asked me, there was other things with other beings around me, which I'm happy with them being around, um, if I had any reptilians around me or attached to me, and straight away the answer was yes. And I remember it quite clearly. It's like if you a claw of a like a lizard, and it
Mm,
was attached to the right side of my front of my head, and I also had a chip in there, like a microchippy type thing. And
mm,
James put me through. You got your own work? Is there
Yes,
practitioners there to help?
I have
Make
my
sure I
own
breathe it
healing
out.
team.
Your
I have my
healing
own
team.
healing team. Yeah.
And I remember it was just this, the thing, you have your human side thinking, this is all in my head, but the excruciating pain that I got when I was going through this particular removal of what to me was like a leftover claw, like the rest of the bean wasn't there, but the claw was still in my head. And the removal of that, I just still remember the sharp pain that I was getting in that area while we were working on it. And it was just incredible. It was like, wow, that is so intense. But I can tell you, since that happened, and that was like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, because you haven't actually told me, what's happened since. So
Oh, and it's just been, um, I just can't stop. Like now, it's like just organizing. I can't stop. I don't want to stop. And the funniest thing is, I've had a really sore back for 2 weeks, but I haven't let that stop me. I've been getting annoyed at it. But it's one other thing that I found in some of my readings, like I'm not very good at dates, and I'm not very good at, well, I haven't been, I should say, good at dates and names. And I tell you now, I've been picking up names. I've been like hearing names. I've even had them yelled at me. Um, Dates,
excellent.
ages of people, and just the clarity is coming through so much different. But there are other things. What had happened? Yeah, just those sorts of things have just, it's almost like it's cleared it up a lot.
Well, you see, the thing is that you're no longer being interfered with.
Mm,
And so, because you're no longer being interfered with, some of your natural true abilities are now able to come through.
yeah, and you
And
know what
so
I've
it makes
seen?
a huge difference.
And twice now, the color of selenite, the if especially it's polished, I've had streaks of that. Like the other night, I was on a Skype doing a practice reading, and there's probably about 60 centimeters between my laptop and my glass of water I had, and this big streak came down from behind my laptop and down towards my glass. And then I was in my lounge the other night, and the same thing happened again. So I've been seeing different things. And then, that energy that came through the other night, the one that growled at me, and just being able to deal with, not that I've never experienced that before, to be honest, but just sort of like, it's sort of like, okay, and because I was on my own that night, and I was normally would get freaked out, but no, I brought it down really, really small, and it actually got quite sad. I got the feeling of it being quite sad, and just told it to leave. But it's been a really interesting 2 weeks, to be honest.
Excellent.
Of and I did a healing on Saturday as well, and I found that I was a lot faster, and like the energy that came through and what I was able to do and see, and it's just really amped up a lot more. So like you said, it's sort of like given my, so that I can be who I'm supposed to be. And
Well, that's, you see that, because I do spiritual guidance sessions as well.
mm,
And it's like everything that I do is designed for one thing only, and that is to assist people to walk the path that they are here to walk. It's
mm,
very simple. It is very intense, and it can be very, very intense. But at the end of the day, I'm overjoyed with some of the things you're telling me here, because it felt like, when the show wasn't able to go ahead a couple of weeks ago,
mm,
and we decided to Skype anyway, and have a chat anyway. It really felt to me, to be honest with you, that it was all a setup.
yes,
It
they
was all a
interfered.
setup. The show was interfered because on that day, it wasn't about the show. It was about
Mm,
you and I connecting, and it was about us, and it was about getting rid of this crap that you've been carrying, that's actually
yes.
been holding you back from actually doing what you need to be doing. And so, to hear what's been going on for the last 2 weeks, for me, very, very excited. That really makes my day.
That made my day. I was like, I've got to tell James, but I've just been so busy, James.
That's good. That's
I've been
good.
so
I'm glad.
busy. And it's just really it's just opening up so many different aspects, and it's sort of even with this market that I did, it's a lovely community market, but it's, I suppose, not the level to where I want to be. I'm not quite sure there. I'm still mulling that through my head because you got all the and not being disrespectful to anybody else, but just your sort of like your regular sort of stuff. And I know that I'm not always just regular because I like to
No.
get into different energies, and but I think I know I'm on the right path now, and like connecting with you, it's the right area, and
Yeah.
and I've ever met some other people that are, when I spoke to them, and even about yourself and about the experiences, and they're like, wow. So I've connected with other people as well that are sort of I don't want to say different level, but it is a different level as your usual stuff, if that makes sense. Your usual tarot readers or your usual mediums,
No.
psychics,
See,
whatever.
see,
It's sort of, that's different.
no, you see, that makes perfect sense because the thing is, I mean, I find it myself because for myself, I'll be very honest. I actually have been very, very slow for the last 5 weeks. But the reason is because my wife and I have moved from Wellington down here to Dunedin, and we've had to fit out an entire house. And, we've going to the spiritual fair on Saturday was actually our first real foray since we've moved down
Mm.
here. Because it takes a lot to not only move, but you see, we got rid of everything that we had before we came down here. So we
Wow.
had to we were literally starting from scratch. We had to buy all new furniture, all new this, all new that, and then we found out that the house hadn't really been maintained the way it should have been maintained, and things like that. And so we've been very full on doing that kind of work and that type of stuff. And the spiritual work and everything has been kind of in the background, and but that's now in the process of really shifting, and now I'm going to be more focused starting this week on getting back into the work that I need to be doing and the spiritual work and everything like that, and just putting it out there that um, I'm back in business and ready to rock and roll again. So yeah, it's just been very full on.
It has been a very full on time. I find it's been a very full on year, to be honest. It seems to be sort of
Oh,
like just the constantly going through things, but it's good.
this year, to be honest with you, has been. I mean, I think part of the last few weeks has also been about catching up with myself. I mean, we put a house up for sale. We bought a house. We had my daughter was over from Melbourne over like Christmas and New Year's and everything, and then selling the house, finishing work, buying a house, moving, everything else, plus doing two Blue Star healing workshops in amongst all that as well. It's been, I mean, I've just been crazy.
It's amazing how you can actually fit it all in, and
I
you
know,
sort of
I
look
know.
back and go, "How did I do that?" And it's just like with me, I just feel like I'm surrounding myself this year with different paperwork, and it's just I start finishing one thing that I need to complete, and then I'm on to the next before the last one's finished, and it just keeps going. But I mean, to be honest, they're all good. They're all worthwhile doing. They've all gone smoothly. Um, but it's just a I don't know what even you would call that. It's just an organisation, yeah. And that's the same thing, organising myself, getting myself going. And I
Yeah.
love all aspects, whether it be when I'm within the mediumship of things, or with the psychic side of things, or whether I'm in the healing side of things. But I think I've mentioned it before, I think they all go hand in hand. And just I think too, like anybody who's in this developing, I think you're always learning and developing. You never stop. And what you do answers probably a lot of questions as to, okay, I know I do Reiki, or I do readings, but these things come through for me. So these sort of answer some of my questions as to, oh, is that what's happening for me?
Yeah, and the thing is that having had that conversation with you,
Mm,
I realized, and perhaps I should have said this before. I don't know. Um, there's a lot more to you than you've actually realized yet.
yeah.
And I for one, to be really blunt and really honest, I for one am going to really enjoy seeing the the unfoldment of Janette, because there's a lot more to come. I'm telling you now, there's a lot more to come, and it's going to be really exciting moving forward. And I think it's going to be brilliant, and I think that you'll actually find that this is just you're at a beginning point as far as I'm concerned, and it's going to
Definitely.
be your what's coming for you is going to be really powerful and really potent, and I think it's going to be brilliant. I really do.
So watch this space.
Watch this space, people, because it's going to be fun to watch.
I'm open and ready and willing, and it's like I'm just starting to meet more and more people that sort of are helping me open my eyes. Well, actually, probably not so much open my eyes, but understand more of what goes on for me. And some people think you're nutty, but I don't think I'm nutty. I think I'm just more open, and like yourself and like many of us that are out there, whether you're doing mediumship readings or whether you're doing healings or whatever it is that you do, there's just so much more to it.
Yes, yes, there
But it's a
is.
matter of taking the time to understand it, and not to be fearful. I mean, I know this is a myths and legends show, and we do supernatural and paranormal and that, but I think there's a lot more to even that. And everything, like I've said, the fear factor is that the more fear you put into it, the more fearsome it is. Um, it's like
Yeah,
me the other night when I had, I was hissed at and I saw green eyes, and I've never seen green eyes. Well, I mean, I have green eyes, but I mean, that sort of green eyes. And then having this energy, and it was walking around my bed, and I was like, what on earth is this? But because I've opened my eyes and had a wanting to understand a bit more about them, I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It was called Starship Troopers. There's a Starship
I
Troopers is actually a movie. They
yeah, yeah,
remind me
yeah.
of that. Yeah.
Oh,
Not. I
okay,
don't
all
think
right,
the way that they walk, their
right,
legs. It's
yeah.
their legs. I
You
was
know,
more. Sorry.
the thing is, in what people just don't understand, it's like those people who have looked into, let's say, extraterrestrials.
Mhm.
It's like we hear about certain ones like the Pleiadians or those from Sirius or Arcturus, so on and so forth. But the bottom line is, and the truth of it is, there are beings from a lot of different places, and there's a lot of different beings that are interacting here. And in
Mm.
truth, over the course of I would say the last 20 years, there have actually been even more beings that have been interacting here, because it's coming to a point now where, well, to be blunt about it, it's they're coming now because of what's happening on the planet. And a
Mm.
lot of people don't realize that what's happening on the planet is actually more profound than they can possibly imagine. And it's really quite exciting moving forward. But there are those beings that are reptilian like, there are those beings that look like praying mantis. There are beings out there,
Yes.
all different kinds and all different shapes. And the thing is that we look around our little planet here, basically,
Mm.
and we think, oh, you know, all the beings in the universe, for those people that believe in extraterrestrials and stuff, they'd probably go, oh yeah, they probably look like everybody else and blah blah blah. No, they don't. They don't look
Mm.
like everybody else. And it's very different than a lot of people realize and understand. And yeah, I think, eventually they'll get to a point where those interactions will happen. But yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of. I think this is going to be. I think I've done a channel myself once with the spirit beings that, which are the really good vibration ones that I deal with, and there's so much more to come with the
Yes.
changes in the world and the
Yes.
reasons for it. It's and for me, from what I've picked up, is that it will be the shift in the way we once knew what Earth was all about. But I don't think it's gonna be, because there's gonna be a lot of people who won't be able to handle that sort of thing. Oh, it's weird. I'm starting to get things now. It's like some people are going to be blinded, not physically blind, but will be blinded. So there'll be this cloaking going on with certain people who can't. Not everyone's going to see who they actually are.
Actually,
How do you make that sense?
actually, no, no, no.
Mm,
It makes perfect sense because in actual fact, that's already begun.
mm. Hello.
And well, I mean, it has already begun because the
Yeah.
thing is, I mean, look, at the end of the day, as I said at the very beginning, I'm a channeler and have been channeling for 27 years. So I have
Mm,
channeled for a very, very long time. Now, for many individuals, you look at people like JZ Knight or Lee Carroll, Solara, um, people like that. And generally, they only channel one being, and that's
mm,
the only being that they channel. That's not the case with me.
mm,
I have literally channeled hundreds of different beings over the years.
mm.
And it's just mind blowing the number of beings that I have channeled. And the thing is I have channeled many extraterrestrials. And I actually channel for the public stuff, shall we say. I channel a being named Miloth, who is a fifth dimensional being from the blue star, where I am from.
Nice,
And
nice.
he is an incredible being and love him to death. And I'll tell you a story if you want to hear it with regards to Miloth, but not on the other side, but when he came to visit on this side of the veil
Okay.
in this lifetime. Um, so at the end of the day, it's like there's a lot of beings out there, and for many people, it's like it's gotten to a point now where it's like, well, we're not going to go there right now because it's not going to work in the moment. And so there are individuals who, if they're not open to the experiences and if they're not open to the energies, shall we say, they will be removed and get to come back with more of the new energy. And
Ah,
that's all that there is to it, if that makes sense.
yes, it does make sense.
I'm trying to say this in a really nice way.
Going for a recharge.
It doesn't always work very well, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, the beings from these different worlds and different planes of experience, they they're here to assist us in our evolution and to assist the planet. And if someone is too rigid in their thinking and in their beliefs, then whereas in the past they may have gone, okay, well, we'll just go ahead and um, we'll just continue working with them until we can get them to a point where they can be more open and we can start working with them more fully. And that's not happening
Mm,
anymore. That's not the case anymore, people. It's like, you want this? Fine. You got to do this. You got to open yourself up. You got to walk the walk. You got to walk the talk. You can't just play games anymore. And too many people are still playing way too many games,
Oh, absolutely.
in
This is
my
why the world
opinion.
is the way it is. Oh, yeah, I totally agree. That's why the world is the way it is at the moment, and it's just one big game for a lot of people.
Yes,
And but
unfortunately.
yes, but I mean, even working, and you would know yourself, the amount of I'm really drawn to a lot of children that are coming through, um,
Yes,
and
yes,
most people that come through with children, I go, you need to bring this um, different energy and encourage it with them, and it'll just make life a lot more peaceful when they're older. And um, it's just such a big struggle out there with I, there's so many disorders that are out there now that are really really prominent, and they can be quite touchy subjects, so I won't say which ones they are, but they go along with thyroid issues, put it that way. And it's just amazing how many people, and we actually talked about the other day, is like people are not looking within to
no, they
heal.
aren't. No, they
They're
aren't.
not looking within. But in saying that, there are people that are starting to, like, and I know with men as well, are starting to sort of like flick their thought patterns, like, well, maybe this might be okay to try this, and I really, really like that side of healing, whether you want to call it Reiki or whatever healing it is. If there's a healing that goes with it, like when I know some people who do Reiki just purely just balancing the chakras and that sort of thing. When
Yeah.
I work with it, some people I do just do that because it's all they need. That's fine. But I find a lot of people, it's sort of like the blocked energy, the removal of things that are in them that are making them stuck, and opening their minds up a bit more to, it's not just this box that we live in. There's more to it. We don't live in a box, but
No.
we are told to live in a box. And I think the more
Yes.
that people can open these boxes, and I think, and I'm going to say this because I have suffered this myself as anxiety, um, but I've worked through that with myself. I still, every now and again, can get a little twinge of it, but I deal with it and I know how to deal with it better. But it's like very, very minute. But I have suffered greatly in the past from it. And I'm finding there's a lot of people that I actually am seeing and I know of suffer greatly of anxiety. And I actually had a conversation with somebody in the weekend who's actually studying psychology, etc. And they challenged me on the fact that you can actually heal your anxiety by looking inwards and healing inside out, rather than going always for the pharmaceutical side of things. I mean, if that's what you need for now, for sure, but always look on the inside, because it's just the tablets are just masking what's really going on. And I think more and more people, they're like, I've been here doing healings on. And it's quite ironic how they do have anxiety, but they also have thyroid issues. And if you know about the chakras, which you obviously do, solar plexus,
I do.
main thing is there
Yes.
about how that's about yourself, and throat, but just to put it in easy terms, throat about speaking, and speaking pretty much what I say is your heart's truth, your soul truth. And when you cut those things off, guess what you get? Anxiety and
Yeah.
throat issues. And
Yeah.
I mean, that's just putting it basically what those chakras do. But I'm just finding that there's so many more people coming through with those combined issues that I'm hearing about, that I'm surrounded by, and coming to me for healings. So
No, but that's absolutely correct. And you are absolutely correct. And I'm dealing with a lot of people who they think they got it going on.
mm,
They think that they're doing all the things that they need to be doing, and everything, should be, appropriate and proper, and everything like that. And the truth of the matter is the fact that um, they don't actually have things as sorted as they think they do.
Mm.
And
How many
it's and
times
it's really diabolical in many respects. And they just and it's like sometimes I find myself just standing and going, what do I need to do to get you to understand? You know, and it's just really frustrating sometimes
how many
to
times have you
know.
had some, yeah, and how many times have you had people come to see you? I do Reiki myself, or I'm, you know, a reader or a psychic or whatever, or a medium, and it's always quite an interesting way to start off. I like it when people don't tell me what they do, but because I think, you know, they've already put their bit into it at the beginning, if that makes sense. It's
Yeah,
you know, like they pump themselves up before they've done their healing, if that makes sense. I have had experienced that with, I just mentioned before we started the show about an interesting reading that I did, um, and the person was, she said that she's, I can't remember whether it was psychic or she was see things and things like that, but it's like an interesting reading, that's for sure, where I had to, in the end, leave the building. But yeah, I think we're on the right track though, and I think
yes.
we slowly getting through to them, and I'm sort of putting it out there probably to the younger generation as well, to help them understand things from a different perspective, like this perspective a bit more of what's going internally for them going forward before they have their adult veil over them, if that makes sense. Because, you know, we get to adulthood and then we put this veil on, and that's how we stay unless we decide to take that veil off and be a bit more open about different aspects as to what human life is actually all about. And it's
Yes, but
more
at
than
the
just
same
being
time,
human.
I really do feel as though one thing that I've noticed, and I guess because I've been on this path for so long and I have seen so much, is I'm actually noticing that there are people who you would look at and probably, especially if you're involved in the type of spirituality that we're involved in, and go, well, they don't really appear to me to be very spiritual. And in truth, they're actually very spiritual, and how they
Mm,
live their life is very spiritual. And it almost feels as though spirituality in truth is starting to shift and change. And
mm,
it's not the way it used to be. And, that I said on my show recently that I really feel that in 100 years, you probably won't have psychics and you won't have healers and you won't have channelers and stuff like that. Not that, I mean, I love what I do, and when I can assist somebody to open up and to shift, kind of like doing that work with you, and now hearing back from you going how, and hearing how it's really shifted and changed things for you, that
mm.
means everything to me, because it's like that tells me, okay, well, I'm doing what I need to be doing, and if I can assist somebody to walk their path a little bit more fully, that's what I'm here to do. So,
Absolutely. And we keep doing it until we can't do it anymore. And hopefully there's people who come up behind us and continue that work, but hopefully in, you know, gosh, I wouldn't say years to come, but because I think it's going to be a bit more evolution than that. Um,
mm,
Even hundreds of years down the track, people are going to be fully aware and able to have more of a healing aspect to them. But I think the world's going to have a big shift soon, I reckon.
oh,
That's for sure.
I agree completely.
There's big shifts coming, bigger than what we think. It's not just about war either.
No, no. Now I would actually like to share a story with you,
Please
which
do.
which I think is just mind blowing. and it I'll try and be brief. I'll try. Um, but
You got
it
10
has to
minutes.
do, yeah. Well, it has to do with how I started on my path. I lived in
Oh,
Long Beach, California, and I worked for Jet America Airlines. And my grandparents and my mother lived in Oklahoma City. And I was very, very close with my grandmother. My grandmother and I were like two peas in a pod, and she was the only person in my family I was ever really close to at all. Four different occasions I called home, and my mom would answer the phone, and I'd be beside myself. I'd be like, "What's wrong with Grandma? What's wrong with her? How's she doing?" I mean, to the point of being freaked out. And every time she'd say she's fine, no problem. And so the last time it happened was around the 1st of November of 1986, and same story. She's fine. No problem. And I talked to my grandmother, and everything seemed fine. Okay, that's good. And next thing I know, a week later, my mom calls me at work and says, "I need to tell you that your grandmother fell and broke her hip." And I'm like, "Okay." They've done surgery. Everything's going fine. She's coming off the respirator. Everything looks fine. There's no problem. I said, "Well, do you want me to come home?" "No, no, 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 no. Everything's fine. Everything's fine." I'm like, "All right, all right." So I get off the phone. I tell my supervisor, and of course, she asked if I wanted an emergency pass to go home, and I said no. They said everything was fine. Now this is a Friday.
mhm.
15 minutes later, I'm back in my supervisor's office, and I'm going, "I have to have that pass to go home." She's like, "Okay, no problem. You'll get the tickets on Monday, so book yourself on a flight for Tuesday." I said, "No problem." So I do that, and um, basically, I get the tickets on Monday, and I'm scheduled to fly out at 7 in the morning Tuesday morning, from Long Beach to Dallas, Dallas to Oklahoma City, and so about 20, 30 minutes after I get my tickets, supervisor comes out again and says, "I just out of curiosity, did you apply for the ticket counter position in Minneapolis?" And I'm like, "Yes." She said, I realize you're going home tomorrow because of your grandmother, but the interview for that's at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning." and I'm supposed and I'm supposed to be flying out at 7 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, "Oh, okay, no problem. I'll be there. I'll be there, no problem." And so I go through the interview and everything. I get on the plane. I almost got bumped in Las Vegas because I had to take a different flight, of course. And I get to Oklahoma City, or to Dallas rather, and all of a sudden it's like I get bumped off the next two American flights. Now, here's where it gets fun. I take the last seat on an American flight at 9 p.m. out of Dallas to Oklahoma City. Now, at this particular point, I have had experiences, but I hadn't really explored much in the way of spirituality for the simple reason growing up in Oklahoma, it's a Bible belt. So I grew up a Christian and everything, and that was my understanding of things. Although it was obvious that there was something else going on. I just hadn't figured that one out yet.
Mhm.
And so I had told my mom, I said, "Look, don't worry about it. I will call you when I arrive in Oklahoma City because I'm flying standby and I have no idea when time I'm coming in. All I have is a carry-on bag. So I actually, where everybody else goes up through, down to baggage claim, I just go up through the
Yep.
terminal to the front of the airport. And I kind of emerge through this archway. And it's like I stop like I hit a brick wall. And I hear clear as a bell in my head, "Look to your right." And I'm like, "Okay, I'm just tired. I've been up since 4 o'clock this morning. I've been up since 4 this morning. I'm tired. I just want to, call my mom and go see my grandmother. That's all I want to do. Look to your right." And I put my bag down and I'm like, I must just be going crazy. Third time, "Look to your right." "Fine, whatever." Turn, look to my right, and lo and behold, there's my mom at the American ticket counter trying to find out what time I'm coming in. And I'm like, I'm not even going to ask. I'm not. No, 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 no. I'm not even going to ask. So we go to the house. Yeah, I know. And we go to the house, um, and I say hello to my grandfather, and my mom and I go on to the hospital, and my grandmother, just to set the scene, is in ICU in a private
Mm.
room. And my mom's like, go ahead. She tells me on the way to the hospital that Saturday night, fluid had built up around my grandmother's heart and she had a relapse. And as of mid morning Sunday morning, she'd responded to nobody. As you can imagine, I'm completely devastated because my grandmother is the only thing that means anything to me in this world. And I'm thinking I'm never going to get to speak to my grandmother again. So I go into her room and I sit down on the bed, and she's got IVs, she's got a respirator, she's got well, not a respirator, she's got an oxygen tube. She's got an NG tube, a feeding tube that goes through her nose. Her wrists are strapped down because she'd inadvertently pulled her NG tube out twice. So I sit down on the bed. Her eyes are closed. I sit down on the bed. I take her hand in mine, and she opened her eyes, and we talked for half an hour. And it was the last time. It's the last time she ever spoke, ever.
Unbelievable.
And she told me, she said, "I know what's going on. I know what's happening. It's all right. Don't worry about it. Everything is fine. However, I need you to do a couple of things for me." Now, this is my grandmother. Now, I'm a Southern boy. I grew up in Oklahoma as a Southern boy. So my response, of course, was, "Yes, ma'am." And so she goes, "Number one, I need you to make peace with your grandfather before he passes away." And I'm like, "All right, I will do that." And honest to God, I did do that. I actually took care of him the last year of his life.
Yeah.
And I did make peace with him. So that was good. And the second thing that she said was, "You need to stay on the path that you're starting." Now, I have no clue what she means by path that I'm starting. I have no clue at all. I'm like, I'm clueless, but this is my grandmother. If she told me to find a burning coal in hell and sit on it until she came for me, it would be yes, ma'am. And I would do everything in my power to do so. And so I said, "Yes, ma'am. And so that was the last time she ever spoke.
Unbelievable.
And 4 days later, I'm at the hospital with my mom, and my mom's getting ready to take me to the airport so I could fly back to LA. And she's just beside herself. She's so angry with herself. And I'm trying to calm her down. And I'm like, what? Finally, after about 5 minutes, I'm able to calm her down enough. And I go, "What is wrong?" She goes, "I missed it." And I said, "What do you mean you missed it? What did you miss?" She said, "Four times you called home wanting to know what was wrong with your grandmother, and I missed it." And I said, "What do you mean?" She goes, "All four times we had to rush her to the hospital the next day. And the
Unbelievable.
last and the last time you called, the last time you called at 8 o'clock the very next morning is when she fell and broke her hip." And I was
Unbelievable.
like, "Holy crap," you know. And so she passed away on the 30th of November of 86. Now, my best friend, my best friend was a guy named Hal. And as far as I knew, he worked in the same airline that I worked in. And I do mean as far as I'm aware, because I worked in reservations, and I would see him come into the reservation office. I would see him have conversations with different supervisors and stuff like that in there. And I couldn't really tell you how we met.
Well,
Okay.
do you know what, James?
Yeah.
What we're going to do is you're going to hold that thought. We're going to have to go to a break, just a quick break,
Yep. Yep.
and then you can continue out that very interesting story
Okay.
after we come back, if that's okay.
Yeah.
We
Oh,
need to
oh
do a
yeah.
quick break.
No
Um,
worries.
so just to let everybody know, we are we will come in and tell some stories of Tell Me a Ghost Story and the GPSML in the next hour. So you're talking with Janette Jade, Psychic Medium, and James Thomas Devitt. So we'll see you all back shortly after the break, and with some more interesting stories, hopefully, off some of these pages and the rest of what James is saying. So we're going to break now. See you back after the break.
We will be right back with more from Myths and Legends. Don't go anywhere. Don't miss out on the next scary tale coming up after a short break. We will be right back with more from Myths and Legends. Don't go anywhere. Don't miss out on the next scary tale coming up after a short break. Spiritualistonline.com. Online since 2002, teaching all aspects of personal and spiritual development. Free to all with audio-video chat rooms, members forums, and SOC radio live shows on site. The Spiritualist Online Network and Lyceum, a global oasis for spiritual awareness, development, attainment, imparting knowledge, thoughts, ideas to inspire. One site, linking a whole network of spiritually informative, educational and interactive services, encompassing every faith, path, walk, religion as one. Myths and Legends with Janette Jade and guests, Monday at 10 a.m. UK time and 11 p.m. New Zealand time. Do you like ghost stories? Are you interested in true, historical and fictional spooky tales? Then join us each Monday for some spooky tales from Facebook group Ghosts, the Paranormal, Supernatural Myths and Legends. Psychic medium Janette and her guests chat and discuss these and other stories, personal experiences alongside some readings and messages from Spirit and more. Dare you call in and share your stories? Add Circle of Mediums to your Skype and join in the show. Spiritualist Open Circle Forum Panel Show, the liveliest spiritual chat show online. The Spiritualist Open Circle Panel Forum Chat Show with hosts, guest speakers and panellists discussing and challenging all areas of spiritual thought, ability, knowledge and more. Ever wanted to voice your thoughts and help set standards within the field? Confront those who bring the work down, or simply share your ideas and help bring Spirit's work into the light of day and give spiritualism the recognition of all as a true faith and way of life? Then this is the show for you. Every last Friday of the month, 10 p.m. UK time. Join the team. Join us on SOC Radio. Host your own online radio show. We welcome inquiries and ideas for your own show live right here on SOC Radio. Share your knowledge, thoughts and abilities. Bring your ideas to life with us here on SOC Radio and spiritualistonline.com. Or join any of our shows as a special guest, speaker or presenter. Check out the liveliest spiritual chat show, the Spiritualist Open Circle Panel Forum, a monthly discussion show, or the Circle of Mediums, a weekly show sharing spirit messages and teaching all aspects of mediumship and psychic abilities. Or join our Christina on the monthly astrology show. Contact us now at socradioshows@gmail.com. Advertise with SOC Radio. 10, 15, 20 or 30-second jingles, adverts or promotions, all going out live on SOC Radio. Promote your services, churches, groups or events at the best rates online. Work with us on shows or promotion and you could get your jingles absolutely free. For this and more, contact Julie at socradioshows@gmail.com. SOC Radio aims to provide a wide range of hosts, shows, views and opinions while endeavouring to maintain our three vital principles of openness, honesty and integrity, covering all aspects of spiritualism, mediumship, healing, personal and spiritual development for all faiths, religions and walks of life as a way of life. As part of our spiritualistonline.com, Spiritualist Online Network and Lyceum, Soccer Radio brings you the latest and honest news, views and names in the spiritual field. Check us out and tune in to Soccer Radio on spiritualistonline.com. Join in the Soccer Radio chat room on the website. Welcome back. Are you sitting comfortably? Then we will continue with more scary stories, experiences and messages from realms yet to be explained.
Back to Myths and Legends. I'm Janette Jade, Psychic Medium. Welcome back to our show. We have guest James Thomas Devitt on our show this morning. And just to let you know, if you'd like to join in with our chat this morning, you can free call us on Skype, Circle of Mediums. We also have the chat room running on www.spiritusonline.com. If you want to join in with any of these conversations that we're having this morning, please do so. Love to hear from anybody who has something to share with us, whether it's your own personal experiences or whether you've got questions for myself or James. Would welcome that. So welcome back, James. We had to sort of cut you short in the middle of your story there, which we were keen to listen into to what the rest of that story is about. So
yeah, thank you. No, it's good because Hal was interesting. So I had known Hal for a couple of months, and my grandmother, of course, passed away on the 30th of November of '86. And the airlines, when you work for the airlines, of course, there are no holidays because they run 365 days a year, all the time. And so it was fine, no problem there. And so for Christmas Eve, my roommate, his name was Lexi, and myself, we decided just to have kind of a party with Hal and Lexi and myself. And the party was basically just to commiserate the fact that, we couldn't be at home with our families for the holidays and everything. And so we're having a party, we're drinking, we're doing probably some things we probably shouldn't have been doing, but
as you do.
I'll be yeah, as you do, and I'll be, I'll leave it at that. And
Yep.
I wasn't doing too much and I wasn't drinking too much because I had already agreed to assist a friend of mine that I worked with. She was going to show up at my house at 5:30 in the morning, and I was going to take her to the airport because she was going to be one of the lucky ones and got to go home on Christmas Day and see her family and everything, which was cool. So about midnight, I noticed that Lexi was starting to get kind of drunk and everything and whatnot from his partying, but Hal wasn't, although Hal was doing just as much as Lexi was. And so I found that to be a little bit interesting. And then at 2 in the morning, Lexi's, stumbling upstairs to go to the toilet and everything. And Hal looks at me like, wow, here's my opportunity type of a look. And he's like, can we go outside onto the porch? I got something I need to tell you. And I'm like, yeah, okay, no problem. We'll go outside. And now the porch is very small. It's cemented. The fence is about 6 foot high. The porch light is on. And if you put people out there, you might be able to put 8 or 9 people standing, and that would be it. It was not a large space. So Hal's kind of hemming and hawing, and it's one of those things like, I really need to tell you something, but I don't know how you're going to react. And so he's trying to hem and haw and everything. And then finally he goes, okay, you don't come from this planet. You come from elsewhere. And my reaction was, yeah, okay. Now, mind you, later on, what really freaked me out wasn't what he said. What freaked me out was my reaction to it, which was, yeah, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, And right after that, Lexi comes out comes outside. And all of a sudden, it's like Hal looks at Lexi and says, Lexi, you need to turn the porch light off. There's way too much energy going on out here. Now, at that particular juncture, I didn't know what he meant by that. Lexi was
Mm.
too pissed to care. And so, of course, very promptly, moments later, the light bulb goes boom and explodes. And so I'm like, "Oh, this is pretty cool. This is kind of trippy." So at 5 o'clock in the morning, Lexi and Hal go upstairs to crash, and I waited another 30 minutes, and my friend showed up, and I took her to the airport, came back, go upstairs to go to bed, and I look in, and Lexi's out cold, and I look around, and strangely enough, Hal was nowhere to be found. He was gone.
Mm.
Now this was Christmas morning, 1986. Today is the 1st of May 2017. And as of today, I have not seen Hal or heard from Hal or spoken to Hal since that morning.
Really? Is it like
No. And it gets better because I
okay?
actually asked several people at work, I'm looking for Hal. Do you know where Hal is? And they're like, who's Hal?
Who's how?
They had no clue who I was. Now, my roommate Lexi remembered him, but it was like, I was like, have you heard from Hal? And he'd be like, oh, no. It was like, no big deal. It was like, oh, yeah, whatever, just, yeah, and it was the strangest thing. The funny part is that now, today, when I
Mm.
do my public channelings, I channel him
Isn't that trippy? Oh my
because he
gosh.
is he is Miloth from the Blue Star,
Yes.
and he came here specifically to give me the message that I didn't come from this planet because you
Oh,
see,
that's awesome.
I went home a couple of weeks later, second week in
Mm.
January for Christmas, because of course I had to work over the Christmas holiday. And I'm sitting, and this is where the story completes. I'm sitting at this bar, and the bar separates our kitchen from our dining room. And to the left is the lounge room. My grandfather's in bed. It's about 2 in the afternoon. My mom's at work. And so I'm sitting there, I'm reading what I term a smut magazine, which is Weekly World News. And
Mhm.
because my grandmother loved reading those and the National Enquirer and stuff, and I enjoyed reading them as well at that time. So I'm sitting there and I'm reading this. Now, I'm not a visual person, okay? And
Mhm.
although I did see a couple of ghosts when I was 16 years old, and I had a close encounter with extraterrestrials and a UFO at 13, I hadn't had a lot of experiences. So I'm sitting there and I'm looking at this magazine and I look up, and standing between the bar and the dining room table is my grandmother. And she's wearing the same kind of flowered dress that she always used to wear, but her stomach wasn't bloated. I don't know whether she had shoes on or not because I couldn't see her lower feet. And she just had this really intense smile on her face. And that night, that very night, and the next night on ABC television in Oklahoma City was the two-part miniseries Out on a Limb by Shirley MacLaine, which was all about her spiritual search and channeling and healings and extraterrestrials and all these things. And that's what started me on this path.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
That, and it's as I like it, but a bit lost for words. Is sort of like what you would be thinking, sort of experiencing each one of those experiences down to how and uh, I think seeing your grandmother's one thing because I suppose it's something that's sort of normal for me to see sort of people on the other side, but
Yeah. Not for
to
me
see
though.
someone, but but to see someone, yeah, like you said, you're not very visual, but to see someone that doesn't actually physically exist, but you're hanging out with them and not
I
realizing that
know,
you're the only one seeing that person. Well, you're
but
not because your other friend does, but it's
yeah.
just incredible. It's
And
incredible.
it
What an
was
incredible
and,
story.
and it was all just to give me that message.
That's amazing. And isn't it funny? Because when you said that, oh, you're not from here, and you were like, yeah, okay. Because I remember, I don't know, I'm not sure if I told you when I did it was completing a course last year where we had to do like 4 days in a row. and we had to introduce ourselves. And I introduced like where we were from. And of course, my one was introduce myself as Janette. And I came down on a star. That's where I came. I came down to Earth from a star. It's like, I can't remember the rest of it, but it's like, why would I? And I'm like sitting there going, how come I've just introduced myself that I'm from somewhere else and I came down on a star? And it seems to be.
Let me see. Hold on. I can do this. I can do this. Hold on. Because you did.
I just thought it was just so funny. And like that weekend was when I started really experiencing bringing in different energies again, like the spirit beings. And they're the ones I'm talking about. They're like really, really tall, but their white is like, I liken it to selenite, polished selenite, that beautiful white.
Yeah.
And it's just such a high vibration. And then they come in, and they actually do have colored crystal in their third eye. Each one has a different color, but it's quite amazing.
I know those beings. I know them,
They're,
and they're actually really, when you interact with them on the other side, they're really, really cool to interact with, and they're just phenomenal to interact with because the vibration that they carry is such that it's just, I don't know, it's one of those things that it's like, they're one of the ones that it's like you just go, yeah, this is like so cool, and it's so cool to be able to interact with these particular beings.
because I know when I first started connecting with them, I started tearing up, and I said to someone, I said, why do I cry? Because they said, because their vibration is such a pure vibration, and it's actually, I suppose it's, if you want to do on the fluffy earthly thing, it was like full of love and but I find that when I do communicate with them, they're very straight, a bit like me, sort of. Well, not when I talk sometimes, but their knowledge is like, no, straight to the point. There's no fluffing around.
No.
And I think, I'm not sure if I mentioned I went to a galactic channeling, and where the lady was channeling in, but I suppose in everybody else's eyes, the sort of the small alien type beings. Excuse me. But my ones came through, and they just stand there with their hands across, the front, and they're sort of like going, no. She's getting like lower level information, galactic information, and they were telling me differently. And I waited until she's finished, and we sort of had a chat about that. So that was interesting conversation, because I'm like, oh, but I mean, they gave me the voice to talk. But they're the ones that I've actually done a little bit of a channeling with. I've only done it once or twice, and I haven't really done too much with it. But like, I utilize their energies in with my healing. Sometimes they come forth when certain things need to be done. But I suppose I'm still working out what all this is all about. This is, like you said, I'm at the beginning of my journey, but I love that their energy is just totally awesome. I love it. And,
no, they are. It's because you mentioned them when we had our conversation a couple of weeks ago, and I did kind of tune in and ask some questions regarding them, and I do remember them, and I remember dealing with them on many different levels and different ways and different things. And I hope you don't mind me saying this, but I really kind of feel like what's going on here is you're actually they're working with you to prepare you for what's coming for you and the work that you're going to be doing in the future.
right. Okay.
And it's really powerful. Yeah. It's really powerful, yeah.
And I do enjoy, and even though I do like all the reading side of things, I feel that perhaps the healing will be quite a prominent thing for me.
It will, but I mean, you got to start somewhere.
Yes.
And you got to start where it's like you have to understand different things. It's like I went through a lot of different things myself,
Mm,
And it's like a lot of those things I don't do anymore and haven't done
mm,
for a long time because I needed to do them so I would understand.
absolutely. And I think
Mm.
because it brings in, like, I really love mediumship because um, I just like that communication, I suppose. I don't know, but yeah, I think I'm probably more drawn to the healing side of things, even though when I'm doing healings, a lot of, I suppose, mediumship stuff does come in anyway, and
Oh yeah,
psychic
yeah,
stuff. So it's all pretty much combined. But I suppose it's all going to be how I present it at the end of the day. And
yeah.
I just, it's just such a neat journey to be on. I'm really excited about going forward with it all. And it's quite funny doing this show, even though we haven't talked a lot about, well, I suppose we have talked about quite a lot of supernatural. But
Yes, yes.
normally it would be like, it's like that fear factor that used to be like, oh, it would scare me. But this show has actually opened my eyes in such a different aspect of it. So, like, I can sit here late at night reading some pretty, like, if you go onto the Tell Me a Ghost Story, they've got some pretty
Yeah.
good stories on there that you can put your
Oh, they
hairs up
do.
on your arms.
They do. They certainly do. You
And
know.
yeah, oh, I'm trying to remember what's been happening around here. Like last night, even dreams. Like, I'm a big dreamer. Not always, but like last night, I still don't know what it was. I was dreaming that someone was walking around on my roof, and then it's almost like then I went to sleep in my dream, and then I was woken up to someone walking on my roof, and I had to wake up, but it was like I was jolted out of my sleep, and I've done it's of someone walking on my roof, but they can't get in, but it's really trippy dreams like that. But I'm trying to remember the dreams after I had after you after I had that healing with you.
Yeah.
I was dreaming because I my friends think I'm nutty sometimes. Like, oh, I had this dream, and I was dreaming that I was reading, and oh, that's right, and I was talking about how spirit or energies, whatever, can actually manipulate electricity,
Yes.
and this is what the series is, how I'm dreaming. And I was dreaming about that electricity, and I could see energies running through electricity, and then I was woken up, and guess what happened? My TV went
Um.
on. My TV went on. I went
Here,
back to sleep.
let us demonstrate for you.
I know. And then I went back to sleep. And then again, it must have been dreaming the same thing. And they showed me 11:11 on a digital clock. And then I was
Oh,
jolted
really?
out of bed. Yeah. And then I was jolted awake. This is all in the same night. And then I was jolted awake, where I literally just about bolted out of bed after they showed me the one ones. I say that all the time. And even last night with that walking, and then I was woken up, and then guess what happened? My TV went on. Uh,
So in other words, just to, kind of verify here. In
mm.
other words, ever since the healing took place, the stuff that they're doing with you has increased exponentially.
That part, with especially that dream, because that happened, I think, either that night or a couple of nights after we did that healing. It was
Right?
like in a short period of time with the waking up TV going on. It is ironic because I will actually get woken up. This has been happening for a while. I'll get woken up, and then within split seconds the TV will go on. So obviously there's energies around. Um, but that one where I was showing the 11:11 as well was at the same, like when I went back to sleep and then showing that and then jolted out, waken up. It's and then of course I've had that entity one as well. So that's all been happening since we did the healing online.
Excellent, excellent. I like this. I like it.
And see, like, the ones are really prominent for me. They have been all year. Every now and again, I see the 555s, 444s, ones. It could be people might have liked 11 things. I might like something on Facebook and it's already got 11 people on it. The other, it was, I had to go somewhere the other day. I was going for a massage actually. And this is it. I left at 1:11. It was going to take me 11 minutes to get there. And guess how many kilometers it was to get there? 11.
11 kilometers.
Yeah. And that's what my life is this year. On my
So,
ones.
and of course, this is, numerologically speaking, a
Mm.
1 year.
Mm. Oh, just
So,
constantly.
so this is a 1 year, and you're seeing all
Mm.
these ones. And
Mm.
so, as far as what it seems to me is like you're right in the middle of a real new beginning, and it's going to
Mm.
be. I mean, oh yeah, this is going to be a fun year for you.
Bring it on. Bring it on. Bring it on. I'm
Now,
open and willing.
excellent, excellent.
You get a
Now,
story.
I've got a story. Now,
Mm.
I've got several stories from the sites that we normally go to, but
Mm.
I thought because I'm from America and I grew up in Oklahoma. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with Oklahoma, it's also known as the land of the five nations, five Indian nations. And so you're talking like Blackfoot, Crow, Cheyenne, Seminole, Apache. That's where Geronimo came from, stuff like that. Um, and there was a story. I wanted to share a story that was from Native American Indians, and it's kind of really kind of cool because you have this connection with Native American Indians anyway.
Mm.
You do.
Yes.
So here's this story. The oral traditions of many Native American Indian tribes, including the Arapaho, Sioux, Cheyenne, and Crow, tell of little people. Now these little people stand from between just 20 inches to 3 feet tall. In some tribes, they are known as tiny people eaters. In others, they were known to have been spirits and healers, and some believe them to be magical, similar to leprechauns or fairies. In any event, the legends were well known among Indians across the nation long before the Europeans set foot upon these lands. To the Shoshone Indians of Wyoming, this small race of people were known as the Nimerigar, and their legends told of the little people attacking them with tiny bows and poisoned arrows. They were also known to kill their own kind with a blow to the head when they became too ill to be an active part of their society. Though part of the legend, this practice of sometimes killing the infirmed was also a regular part of life for many of the nomadic Indian tribes. Though many believe these little people to be only the stuff of legends, several discoveries point to the contrary. The most significant of which was a 14-inch, fully formed mummy found in 1932. Called the Pedro Mountains Mummy, he was discovered when two men were digging for gold in the San Pedro Mountains about 60 miles southwest of Casper, Wyoming. After continually working a rich vein and running only into more and more rock, Cecil Main and Frank Carr used dynamite to blast a section of the mountainside to get at the gold. After the dust cleared, a cave could be seen in the rock face. The small cavern was about 15 feet long and 4 feet high and had been totally sealed off from the outside world by a thick wall of rock. As the men entered the cave, they were surprised to see a small, pygmy like man sitting cross legged upon a ledge. The tiny mummy was only about 6.5 inches tall in its seated position and estimated at 14 inches tall in a standing position. Its skin was brown and wrinkled, its forehead low and flat, its features displaying a flat nose, heavy lidded eyes, and a very wide mouth with thin lips. The face looked like an old man. It was so well preserved, its fingernails could still be seen on its hands, and the top of its head was covered in a dark jelly like substance that was still pliable. The two prospectors took their find to Casper, Wyoming, and in no time scientists came from all over America to have a look at the mummy. Sure that it was a hoax, extensive tests were performed and the professionals assumed it was a pieced together work of taxidermy. However, the anthropologists would soon be surprised to see that x rays displayed a perfectly formed, man like skeleton. The tests also showed that the mummy had been killed violently as the spine was damaged, a collarbone broken, and the skull had been smashed in by a heavy blow. The soft substance at the top of the head exposed brain tissue and congealed blood. After the tests were complete, The scientists estimated that the mummy was a full-grown adult who was approximately 65 years old at the time of his death. One odd finding was that its teeth were overly pointed, having a full set of canines. These examinations were allegedly performed by the American Museum of Natural History and certified genuine by the Anthropology Department of Harvard University. The mummy was displayed in sideshows for years before it was purchased by a Casper businessman named Ivan T. Goodman. When Goodman passed away in 1950, the mummy passed into the hands of one Leonard Walder, a New York businessman who died in the 1980s. It has not been seen publicly since, and its whereabouts are unknown.
I think there is a show that actually has that mummy on it. I've never seen one. And it has all sorts of stuff where I suppose it's like myths or legends and stuff like that. I'm pretty sure, because it was in America too, and I remember seeing something like that on there. And it was a really short being, so I can't remember what the show was called. But it was on paid TV on a documentary of all these sort of different myths and legends. And that sounds very familiar. I've seen that, and that had the same sort of things. They thought it was someone who'd put them together as a hoax, and they discovered that it was actually a real being.
Well, there are so many within the Native American Indian community. There are so many legends and myths. It's just not even funny.
That's amazing. I think I think there's so much more that will be exhumed through all the diggings that they have these days.
They apparently have found those very small beings in, I think it's Indonesia, where they call them the hobbits, because they're very tiny beings. They have recovered skulls from Peru that have the very elongated skulls, which they actually contribute. Well, some contribute to extraterrestrial DNA and everything, because there's also Egyptian ones that were similar to that as well. There's also, they have found physical evidence of giants. And of course, we hear about the giants in the Bible with Goliath and everything, who fought David. So I mean, even back then, it was like these creatures were known and these beings were known, and it's not like,
Well, you think now there's even people that are born very, very small statured, like they've got different types of, I think it's dwarfism of some sort, but then they've also got, I can't remember, it's not progeria, it's something else. Is it which is the progeria one? Where they're really tiny, and they are really tiny, and they're like 60 centimeters tall even. But then you do also have people who have gigantism as well, who are like 7-8 foot tall. So it's a real thing, really.
Well, I mean,
in reality, even now.
I have to admit, I watch professional wrestling. Back, probably like 20 years ago, one of the real famous pro wrestlers, he actually did some movies and stuff like that. He was in The Princess Bride.
Lou Ferrigno.
No, not Andre the Giant.
Andre the Giant, that's the one.
He was in Princess Bride, stuff like that. Now, he actually had a condition where he never stopped growing. He just continually grew. And it was because of that he ended up passing away eventually, of course, was due to his particular condition. Another one who has a similar condition is Paul White, who in pro wrestling terms is known as the Big Show.
Yes.
And he's like 7 foot tall, and I mean, he's just massive. And then there's another professional wrestler who's actually Indian that was like 7 foot tall. The difference, of course, is that where Andre and the Big Show could move,
Yes.
although the Big Show can move better than Andre could, the Indian wrestler actually couldn't move very well at all, and actually stopped being a professional wrestler because of that. So,
Well, there is actually there was a documentary on, I don't know what you call it in any other country, but here it's Foxtel. Is it Foxtel? I can't
well,
remember
here
what it's
it's
called
Sky
now.
TV.
Sky, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
same
right.
thing.
But there was one called My Giant Life, and there are people, and I think
Yeah,
predominantly they were in America, and they're like hitting on the 8 foot mark, and they're fully functional,
yeah, yeah.
and they're just, it's incredible to follow their life story. So it goes to show, and it's quite funny because you got to think what's going on with our human DNA, or is that actually part of a human DNA that's been a linkage that has been, you know, it's passed a few generations and things like that. So it's quite an interesting thing,
Well,
even though they're
I
medical. But
well, well, I actually believe in,
hmm,
you know, in my work that I've done for the last 30 years and the interactions that I've had with the multitude of different beings from all over the galactic sphere, if you will, and everything else, I honestly believe wholeheartedly, and there is, like we've already been discussing, there is evidence of different humanoid species on this planet.
hmm,
I honestly believe completely that there have been over 20 different human species on this planet
yeah,
over the course of time. And so there's going to be some carryover with different, people will have different things that may show up and things like that. And so, yeah,
well, it's quite funny because I often think, so I have a blood disorder, and I've always joked that I've got alien blood, and it was
I
because of
believe
me that
that.
the rest of my family, it's like predominant every single generation that we can go back as far as. And I've always said, it's like, I think hereditary disorders, it's like sometimes I do think, and because the human part of me goes, oh, I'm just being silly, but on the other side of me think, it's got to be something, whether you've had interspecies, um, you know, procreate here on Earth and pass down, because obviously sometimes the gene pool doesn't quite blend so well. And I've often thought about that. And even with myself, it's like, oh, but I always say I've got alien blood because mine likes to clot. So I've got a clotting disorder.
Ah,
And
okay. All right.
yeah, so it's interesting. Oh, that was my thought anyway. I've always thought that maybe perhaps, you know, like you said, people are so, I think some people are aware and some people aren't, is that there is, um, that blending has been going on for, I would say, centuries
It has.
and
It has.
beyond.
Yes.
And there's got to be some mismatching going on. But yeah.
Yes, I totally agree with that. Totally. Yeah.
Mm. Well, do you know what? I think it's about time to read a story off. Oh, my turn to tell a
Yeah.
story, not my own
Yeah.
personal one. I'm gonna tell a quick one later of my own. This is from actually Tell Me a Ghost Story. Now, this isn't actually just. I've actually got a couple here from their page. Be interesting to see what your thoughts are on, because these are actually personal stories of people who have popped them up. So the first one is from Amanda, and this is on Tell Me a Ghost Story. And this is what she said. First, I'll just go past it. It's her first time posting. I'll just go skip all the first bit. So when she's talking about when she was a child. So when I was a child,
Yeah.
I used to stay at my grandparents' house quite often. I lived there with my mum until I was about 3. So it was always my home, and I always ended up back there. Anyway, they have this room where they kept the ironing board and coats and shoes, etc. And there is a window leading out onto the patio. which was all glass. So basically there was two windows facing each other, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And on the wall opposite the window of the cloakroom with all the coats and shoes, etc., she used to see the shadow. It was a massive hand, almost beast-like, and it was holding this square thing against the wall. It used to freak me out, but I used to never really think much of it, thinking everyone could see it, but I was still wary of its presence. Then one day, as I was walking past it alone, she was only about 5 years old, it started moving and making knocking sounds, so I stopped dead in my tracks and just stared at it. And then it moved the square thing in its hand, and like a soft bell noise came out, followed by a loud, husky, manly voice saying, "Amanda, come and play with my music box." I screamed and ran out and told my mum and aunties who had been there, and they came in with me, but it was gone. Apparently, I was the only person who could see it, and I was the only person who heard it. They tried to convince me that it was a shadow of someone knocking on the door, which made no sense because I wouldn't have seen the shadow from there. But being so young, I welcomed the explanation and put it to the back of my mind, although it was years before I went into that room alone again. Never seen it or heard it since that day, but a lot of crazy crap has happened to me since. Like everywhere I go, something happens. It's like I attract spirits or something. This mightn't sound that bad, and to me now, not so much. But I remember the fear right down to the shaking, so clear that it brings it all back. I have never been able to figure out what this was, which was quite interesting as to what that being was. But come play with my music box. And I think this other
Wow.
one that I called it. I'm not quite sure with the description of what it actually looked like. But obviously so if anyone is on Tell Me a Ghost Story, her name's Amanda, and she posted it on the 25th of April at 9:03 p.m. To me, that's just sort of having a paranormal experience.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like the impression that I actually got is that he lived in that house or at that property, whatever. He was a grandfather,
Mm,
and he used to play with this music box with his grandchildren.
mm,
And it almost feels, and this is the kind of the trippy part for me, it almost feels like in another time, as this little girl, she was actually the granddaughter.
yeah. And I sort of like feel that when you said grandfather, I feel like that is like even another generation removed, like a great grandfather figure.
Yeah.
And I want to say that he's probably quite like stubby hands, if that makes sense.
No, no,
Like
total.
shorter,
Yeah,
shorter
total.
hands, shorter hands.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think it's sort of like one of those things. It's like when she's not sure what's happening to herself, it's like, giving yourself permission to actually learn a bit more about the spirit side of things and what happens and why
Yeah.
they come through, and perhaps even asking questions of what that is. But when you are so young, unless you've got parents who are into all that sort of stuff, you're sort of pretty much on your own when you're a kid. At
So
the end of the
true.
day.
So true. Yep. So true.
But here's another one off there, and it's not the same, but it's got the knock in on it, and I think the name is Cheyenne, and again it's off Tell Me a Ghost Story, and she posted it on the 27th of April. My husband and I were in the woods in our vehicle around 2:33. I'm not sure whether that's in the afternoon. I'm assuming it's in the afternoon. My husband said that the music in the car kept getting quieter and then turned up without the volume numbers changing. He also said the whole time the signal on our phone was constantly changing. We normally have a relatively good service there. I was asleep when this was occurring and woke up from having a disturbing dream about a strange face that I've never seen before. My husband had stepped outside of the vehicle for a moment before I woke up. He said he had seen someone standing at the end of the trail. We described the same man's face to one another. The radio in the car was going through 3 stations at once. All were love songs, with static interference involved. The car creaked several times, but we weren't moving. Then we heard 4 sets of a sequence knock within a moment of each other. He stepped out again with the phone for flashlight. The battery was at 15%. When he got back in, it was at 3. He was only outside the car for a few seconds. We got a text from a friend for a ride around 3:10 a.m. On the way to pick him up, we both said he looked like a scarecrow with hollow eyes, empty sockets, with the same decaying features on his face. I'm assuming that's what she was describing with her husband, and that's what they said that their friend looked like. His hair was straight and black, and it was choppy with bald spots. I only saw his face and kept seeing it in my mind. My husband saw him wearing a tattered button-up dark-coloured shirt and a light-coloured pants. After he had picked up our friend and had gotten down the road, after explaining what had happened, he randomly says, "Scarecrow." We hadn't mentioned that part to him. Later on this morning, when we parked at a friend's house, several things in the side door had been moved into the floorboards. The lights kept turning on and off. The mats had been moved. The car was dinging even with the key all the way out randomly. And the trunk opened up and spazzed out. It's never had any of these problems before. We're sort of thinking possible poltergeist. What does 4 knocks mean? Does anyone know what 4 knocks mean? Do you know what 4 knocks mean?
No.
No.
Mm.
But so some of that was a bit hard to read because I got a bit confused reading some of that. But yeah, it's they're obviously seeing something different.
Well, it sounds to me like they picked up on somebody.
Nearby.
Yeah, but it just feels like someone who perhaps had met with foul play or something that was supposed to be
Mm.
out there meeting the love of his life or whatever. And yeah, I don't know. It just a little bit strange on that one.
Well, you know what's just coming to mind there with the fact that it says scarecrow is that I'd be interested
Yeah.
to know whether or not nearby where they were, whether there were open fields that required a scarecrow, and to perhaps foul play came in around that sort of area, and
Oh yeah.
that's the scarecrow being a prominent area as to where something has happened.
Because
That's what I'm getting
it
with it. Is
feels
that?
it feels to me like there's something to do with foul play.
Mm.
Not really sure though, but I mean, yeah. Now I've got one which is a kind of this is actually I got it from the Ghost Story Facebook page. It wasn't I didn't write down who had written it out. This was something that I had found a while back, a few weeks ago. Um, there, the over the it's the boy with brass buttons ghost story. And
Okay. Yes.
it's the ghost story of the boy with the brass buttons, and it dates back to 1889 and is about a family that purchased a rather old-fashioned house in Stuyvesant Square, Philadelphia, in Pennsylvania. The couple started working on refurbishing the whole place. With a lot of time on her hands and very little adult supervision, their youngest daughter started occupying herself by spending a lot of time in the attic that had been converted to a playroom by the previous owners. After a few weeks, the downstairs rooms of the property had been completed, and the mother realized she had been neglecting her daughter, so she attempted to try and spend some quality time with her. However, the little girl appeared somewhat distracted and kept stealing away to spend time alone in the attic. When quizzed about why she liked to spend so much time alone in the attic, she replied that she goes up there to play with a little boy who had shiny buttons. As her father used to be a sailor, her parents soon realized that the boy that their daughter was talking about had a child's sailor suit on. The girl's father started making inquiries about the family that lived there before and eventually got to know from the neighbors that the family had 3 children and that their youngest son had apparently drowned in the river. He had been born retarded, and the father was deeply ashamed of him and tried to prevent him from being seen outdoors. According to neighbors, the parents said the boy often used to sneak down to the river to play, then one day fell in and drowned. The body was never recovered, but the young boy's cap was found floating in the river. The family shortly thereafter sold their house and moved. The girl's father's suspicions by then thoroughly aroused, accompanied his daughter to the attic and asked her where the boy came from, and she pointed to the boarded up fireplace. He had workmen brought in to rip the fireplace out and found the corpse of the little boy dressed in a blue sailor jacket with rows of brass buttons down the front, and an examination revealed that the boy had been murdered by a violent blow to the head.
I was joking on my words then. It's like I was trying to talk and it just didn't want to come out. I was like,
Yeah,
wow, that's incredible.
you
That's a
know,
neat story.
yeah, and it's like because of what had taken place, the boy didn't realize that.
He was gone.
I assume that he didn't realize he was actually gone,
Mm,
and the way things were traveling, it got to a point where he's up there playing because that was where he was kept, and
absolutely.
sometimes when that happens, a person can get stuck
Mm,
until something happens
to
that
release them.
actually frees them to move on.
Yeah, that's very, very true. And I think I worked with someone once. I never heard back from them though, but they were concerned about an energy that they had in their house. And how that came about was really interesting. Was the similar thing, but because I described the house to the person and everything like that and where the energies were coming, because this was just done on the phone and I didn't even know what the person's name was or anything. And I went down and I said, "Oh, you've got a concrete slab on the bottom of your house." And she said, "Yes." And I described an area where there was like a garden at the particular corner and where they were feeling the most energy. And
Right,
then I could look past there. And because they had concreted over everything, it entombed an energy underneath the concrete. And that
right,
again, it was,
right.
to me, it was like a spirit of a little girl. And
Mm,
it's almost like it was before the house was actually built. So prior to that, it was like she was left behind. And then, of course, they concreted over the top of it. And I just worked with this energy of this little girl to actually find a way out from underneath the concrete. But it was quite an interesting process in my head. And while I was talking, because it is in your head, while I was talking to the lady and I was explaining as I was bringing out this energy of this little girl, because the woman had
hmm
been actually pushed down the stairs. And then I said, "Do the stairs face this particular area?" And she said, "Yes." So everything that I was picking up was like I was in her own home, and I
Right.
just explained it to her. But I've never heard back um, as to whether that helped that energy or not. I'm not quite sure, but my my feelings was that's what needed to be done. But but yeah, they do get trapped. I do believe
So,
spirits get trapped, and I do believe by physical things that we have here on Earth.
sometimes they do, and it's and then of course when they try and make contact and they get to a point where they can actually make themselves known to somebody, and then the person completely loses the plot because they're not used to experiencing that.
Mm.
Then it can cause other issues and problems as well. But yeah,
But I think it's sort of like if you have a person, um, like a spirit can still be like us. If you change the environment that spirit is used to being in, and if it hasn't left, it's like, when people do renovations, you often hear people, they do renovations, and then it's like, oh, the spirits come through and they didn't like this change. And I think it's like humans, not every human likes to have change around them. And then when you've got a spirit that's still earthbound, And if they're
Thank you for
stuck and then you
listening to
change the
Tales
environment
from
around, they're sort of like, hang on, the door used to be there, but now there's no door there. And so there's that stuck energy too. That's how I view it. But what happened to me the other day, driving home after dropping my daughter off to school, I was in my husband's car, which is automatic. And that's the majority of the time, because he always parks behind mine, so I just take his. And
As
I'd
you do.
slowed, as you do, and it's easy. Mine's manual, his is automatic. But I
Right.
haven't driven my car for like a month, my manual car, so I'm used to driving the automatic. And I slowed down because I could see someone wanted to sort of come away from the curb after dropping their kid off. So I slowed down and just put the brake on, had both my hands on the steering wheel, and went to go. Looked down, and it was in neutral. So someone changed the gears on me in the car the other day while I was standing still. And everyone says, oh, no,
Excellent.
they said, oh, you probably did it yourself. I said, no, because I had both my hands on the steering wheel. So therefore I did not change the gears. And we don't have that problem in the car. There's nothing wrong with it. So that was quite a trippy sort of, I just laughed.
Well, I mean,
But I
what
thought
else can you do?
yeah, I thought that was quite an interesting thing to happen. And I'm glad that that's all it was.
I mean,
But yeah.
there was, in our house in Cairns, when we lived in Cairns up in far north Queensland, Australia, um, there was an older gentleman, probably in his 60s or 70s, that just hung out in the house, and he used to live there. And although Janice and I never actually saw him, we did feel him. But both the kids saw him,
Mm.
and it's like he wasn't causing trouble or anything like that. It's just that's where he had been living, and yeah, and it was sometimes you get people like that, and they just don't. They they're happy where they are in the moment, and when they're ready, they'll
Mm.
move on. And there was nothing holding him there. He
Yeah.
had really enjoyed his life there, and yeah, it was.
Okay. Well, guess what? We've had such a great 2 hours. We're going to have to finish up. We've got another show coming up behind us. We better get our reel on, and we're going to have to wrap up for this morning. It's been fantastic having you on this morning, James. I've so enjoyed that. And I'm going to be a guest on James's show, not this Thursday, but following Thursday.
Yes.
So you can find me, Janette Jade, Psychic Medium, on Facebook. We are Myths and Legends. And you can find us on spiritualistonline.com. And James, quickly, where we can find you?
You can find me on www.bluestarspiritual.com.
Awesome. Now, apparently there's another show coming on. There's an encore presentation of Astrology Chat with Chrissy and Kim coming up next. So stay tuned. And thank you all again out there listening in to us this morning. And we'll see you next Monday with another guest next Monday. Thank you once again. Have a great week. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Tales from Ghosts, the Paranormal, Supernatural, Myths and Legends. Check out these and more at our Facebook group. See you next week for more.